Setting up the streams.
Yeah. The let me try.
Yeah, by the way, is I mean, okay, this is for Mike, but just letting both of you know, from what I have heard, Microsoft pushed an update yesterday. I actually received notification, but haven't installed it yet. But from other people, I have heard that one of the things it does, it by default blocks any application from using the microphone. That includes the browsers. So if your microphone is not working, you may consider checking the Windows settings, and there is a setting which allows now the microphone to be enabled for the applications to use it. So in case somebody is having problems with the microphone in the browser, that may be the issue.
Appreciate that. I will copy paste what you sent to me into the chat. Cool. All right. So, how about you give us an introduction? Who are you? What is Mitov software? What can we learn from you?
Well, good questions. Let's see how to put them into words. I mean, the answer. So again, Mitov software is something that happened by accident, quite frankly. And the first lesson that probably everybody should learn is never start a company by accident. It's probably not a good idea. Uh, what happened was many years ago, after September 11, I lost my job and I was looking for other opportunities. And in the free time that I had while looking for job, I started working on some products of my own. Then I found a contract work, which I was doing, and while doing it, I kept working on those and eventually released them as products. Initially, those were libraries. The first one, if I remember correctly, was for video processing, allowing software developers to download it and have video processing functionality in their applications. That was followed by signal processing library, then audio processing. Then later on, I added computer vision, eventually artificial intelligence. I created some libraries for data visualization, visual instrumentation, later on communications, and eventually SCADA type of PLC control, industrial control functionality. So Me2 Software was formed effectively to develop, maintain, and sell those libraries. Again, over the years, I have worked with a lot of software developers, and there are a lot of challenges when you integrate something so complex. So I started looking at ways to make it easier for my customers. And what I ended up doing is I developed a technology which allows visually to develop all of this functionality and design it completely visually without writing code. So I didn't force it on my customers, but I gave them the option. Either you write the code or you can alternatively do it purely visually without writing code. Up to you, your own preferences. Eventually, that went ahead for quite some years, but 10 years ago, I, in my free time, started playing with microcontrollers, Arduino boards, and robots, and other devices. And I discovered that programming them is quite challenging, even for somebody experienced like me. So I decided to take my visual no-code development approach, redesign it, and adapt it for microcontroller development. And I effectively created a separated business. I created separated product and business around it, which is called Visuino. And Visuino now can program pretty much any controller you can name nowadays. I initially was selling it and targeting the makers, beginners, students, people without much software experience. But then the mainstream industry discovered it. They discovered that this is a very high productivity solution, and projects that would take them weeks or months to develop, now they can do in minutes or hours instead. So they started buying. I created professional version of Visuino that's going on. And that effectively is the two type of businesses I ended up running nowadays. My traditional libraries targeting software developers, and my Visuino, which targets anybody who wants to program microcontrollers or implement PLCs or SCADA applications and stuff like that. So that's in short about me. And it all happened kind of by accident. So, I mean, everything I'm describing happened by accident. There was no master plan from the beginning or anything like that. They just, life pushed me in that direction. And my first advice to everybody is do not start a business without a plan. Okay. So what I did was, from a business point of view, was a mistake. While I don't regret it, I absolutely enjoy it, and I wouldn't make it, I mean, do it any other way. Uh, I advise you against doing it this way. This is not a smart way to run a business. So that's the first lesson you can learn from me. So I hope this intro gives you good overview over what Mito software is. Most of the stuff is developed completely by me. For many years, I was also doing on the site marketing whenever I had time, and sales, and of course, even today I do customer support. But at least on the Visuino side, now I have a partner that handles the marketing and relieves me from that part, and he does a lot of the customer support. And also, we're working for him to take over some of my traditional software libraries marketing, and he also, of course, develops and maintains the Visuin website, and he will start maintaining and developing further the Mitov website. So that's in short about my business. I hope that covers enough. Any
Yeah. So
questions?
I'm curious while we wait for Mike to raise his hand and join us on stage if Mike has questions, or other people that might be watching on the streams. Um, I, I I think it's good to hear from you because this was an accidental business, and a lot of people that are trying to be entrepreneurs, they are trying too hard in a lot of ways to just find an idea and chase that idea, and they do so often focusing on areas that have nothing to do with their actual experience in life or their skill set or anything else like that. And they might have a lot of plans, but because they're lacking so much of the experience and insight and understanding of what they're doing, who they're doing it for, what life is like for those individuals that their company's meant to support, they don't go anywhere with it. It's a massive failure. But you created a business on accident by doing something that you're very passionate about, and something that you had at the time experience with, and an understanding of how what you were creating was going to be beneficial to yourself first. I am right, because you're using it for your own purposes, creating these libraries, weren't you?
Correct, correct. I mean, everything I created it initially for myself. And the reason I created it, I needed this functionality, and it was not available. Okay. So I saw the need. I mean, I obviously served my own needs initially. And then once when I served my own needs, I showed it to others, and they appreciated it, and they started buying. And the same thing happened with Visuino. I mean, Visuino, I got frustrated trying to program my microcontrollers. I needed something to help me and make me more productive. By the way, accidentally, Visuino we're just at the anniversary of Visuino. I started working few days ago, 10 years ago, to the date. Last Friday was exactly the anniversary of the date on which I wrote the first Visuino code. And approximately today or tomorrow, 10 years ago, I for first time showed the first fully functional prototype to the public. So we're kind of doing it exactly when it happened 10 years ago. But yes, as you said, I did it because I had the need for it. And then I simply showed what I have created to others. They appreciated it, and it eventually turned into a business.
That's great too. I mean, well, first, yeah, congratulations on the anniversary. Had no idea that this just happened to work out that way. It wasn't discussed, but yeah, that's awesome. That's fun. The other thing that's great is you were eager to show this to other people. You weren't trying to hide it. You weren't trying to be stealth. You weren't trying to, you know, protect it from others stealing anything from you, which is another common trap that early entrepreneurs, even like some later stage ones, fall into, where they're paranoid. They're paranoid about what they're creating being stolen from them without realizing that no one's going to steal something that isn't valuable. And when you're first starting out, there's no validation. There's no proof that it's valuable. So there's a very low chance that anyone's gonna try stealing it. The other thing too, to just remind people, that are listening, if someone steals an idea, it's very likely that they're not going to execute it the same way as you intend to, or will, or have. They're going to take that idea and put their own personal spin on that based on their own biases, their own expectations, their own experiences in life, and all these other things. They're going to make assumptions of how they can make your idea better for themselves or for other people. So you ultimately don't end up competing exactly directly in the way that were taught a long time ago about business practices. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you're going to appeal to certain people with your brand, the way you do things, the way you are as a person, and that's going to be where your success lies. And they're going to appeal to different people. So it's not something to worry about. So I want to commend you, and being your younger self, of having that courage and lack of fear to the next day go and show it to the public and get feedback and see what happens. And I'm curious, like when you first were showing people that first iteration of this, yeah, like what was that like emotionally? Like, were you nervous? Like, how'd you handle that? How'd people react? Like, what was like that interaction like?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember again. I mean, 10 years are a decent chunk of time. There is actually somewhere on the web a recorded video of what was happening, because the story was uh, that was the 20th anniversary of Delphi. Visuino is, the idea itself is written in Delphi. And they had a full week of live video and all kinds of events to celebrate their 20 years. And as it happened, they were talking with me. I'm MVP for Embarcadero. And we're just chatting with them around the event. And I said, yeah, I'm developing this new thing and I have it just up and running. And they said, well, let's go live, and yeah, you can show it. And I said, sure, sure, why not? So you can see my reaction, and you probably can see the reaction of the people if you dig out that video. uh, the more interesting reaction was actually after that. Again, the video was interesting. People responded. Some people very excited there on that video event. But what I did, and that's advice that I give to others. I am unfortunately not always succeeding to follow it myself, but I'm trying. What I did after I created that, I very soon after that created Facebook groups and Google Plus at that time was still active, Google Plus groups and everything else, uh, which were around, I mean, just for Visuino. And I initially invited some people to join, but then the word spread very rapidly. And the Google Plus group at that time, within matter of couple of months, reached 10,000 members. There were periods where every minute 2 to 3 people were joining the group, right? So that is that is how much excitement there was when I showed the product, which gave me the validation that there is demand for this type of product. Because again, I mean, people wouldn't be joining if they were not looking for something exactly like this. And then I had very open discussion with a lot of them, a lot of the Visuino decisions in terms of what needs to be added, in what direction it should go, uh, even what the name of the product should be, because originally it was not called Visuino. That was one of the names I was considering. What the name should be, how the logo should look like, all of that was discussed in those groups and was decided by the community. So Visuino is, I mean, again, created by me, but with a fair amount of contribution, at least in terms of feedback, in some cases even more than just feedback from the community. So my other advice to anybody who is trying to do something is engage your potential customers, create communities for them, get as much feedback as you can. Uh, we can go in much more depth. I mean, I'm not sure we have enough time, but in short, what is going to happen is, first of all, you're going to get early feedback. You're not going to make mistakes that are going to frustrate your customers, right? That will be cleared up relatively early. Number one. And second of all, from day one, you have people that are ready to buy your product. Because again, people in those communities, they're looking for this product. They're ready for the product. And number three, those people, because you have engaged with them, because you have created this community, they feel part of what is happening. And that's true. They were part of it. I appreciate what they did. And part of them in terms of spirit is even today inside that product. So they have contributed to the product. They feel part of it. They feel passionate about it. So that's another advice I can give to anybody who is creating new product. Create community around that product. If you can create community, that already gives you validation that there is potential for this product. If you cannot achieve that, you probably are creating product that nobody cares about, and it's going to be difficult to push it to the market. That's all I can say from my own experience.
No, that's good. I think that's, again, that's a great insight and great advice because the community aspect, yeah, it helps validate that people are interested and excited, not just about your product, but about your brand, about you and your company, right? Because you're resonating with them. You're giving them something that is more than just a product. If it's just the product, they won't engage in that way. They'll just get the product and then, do other stuff. I mean, think about how many products you have around you right now that you're not involved in any community. It's a product, right? So it's interesting to like be aware of that and cultivate that. And it kind of touches on a little bit of what I was talking about earlier in regards to this this you know understanding that what you're doing is going to appeal to very specific people, and that's what's going to keep you separate from others in the market that seem like they're competitors, where you don't need to worry about them. If you're cultivating a really strong community that is what like other business people would refer to as loyal customers to your brand, your company, what that means is they're willing to stick by you as you're developing and working through the different iterations of your product and your vision, and they're willing to put up with those little mistakes you make along the way. As long as they're like, good natured mistakes. It's not like, I won't get too into other stuff, but we've seen lots of horrible mistakes made by companies that are evil, to say it, bluntly, just evil. But if you're doing things like, oh, we released this product and the performance isn't what we expected, that's something where your community will have a lot of patience with you and allow for that and be eager to help you get over that challenge with you. And that I'm sure you experience, right? When you're doing those feedback sessions and you're asking them for, insight, not just about the product, but even the logos and such, right? Like a lot of those people were having a good time with that experience they have with you and your brand as participating in part of that, right? They get to be part of the journey and see how you go from this very early stage, rough version of a product to where you are today. And I'm sure that was exciting and fun. It's something that it's, part of like streaming and content of all types where, you know, I was having technical issues earlier. I am not in like a crazy cool studio. I'm not using great equipment, but you being part of this as the community outside of like, me putting you on the pedestal as a mentor today, right? Like you've been part of this from the beginning and it's been awesome from my side as like, the brand to see how excited you are and how engaged you are with everything going on. It's awesome. So I think that too is like a great thing that you called attention to, that if you're cultivating community, you're able to work with these people and build that loyalty and get feedback that's invaluable that you won't get otherwise. So yeah, I'd like to hear more, about some of those interactions early on that really changed the direction of your company that you wouldn't have had otherwise if you weren't actively talking to these people in your community.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because again, I mean, corrections and modifications they were done many times. Uh, there hasn't been any really major decisions. The only really major decision was when I mean, initially the product was completely free while it was in beta. I attempted to keep it completely free and just sponsor it with ads or something. That was a failure. I mean, it was generating less than symbolic revenue. So then I was forced to turn it into effectively at least partially commercial product, while I always will keep a completely free version because I mean my intent is anybody to have the, I mean if they don't have the means to buy it or the desire, still to be able to use it to some extent. So then the biggest decision that was discussed in the community was the decision of how exactly to turn it into a commercial product. What should be the pricing, what should be the model, and so on and so forth. So that's probably the most important decision that was made back then in the community. So other than that, I cannot recall any major changes. Again, that's a 10 years journey. I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
difficulties
But
recalling every single event.
yeah, of course. But even that like is interesting that it was like a committee event with your community to learn from them like how you could commercialize this. And that's kind of interesting. Like typically how a lot of entrepreneurs, come up with their business model and pricing, they either look at others in the market that are similar and they copy them, or they just come up with an assumption just on their own, and they like as part of that assumption they could do a financial model and assess exactly like okay, so here's what all our expenses are, here's how much we need to make every month to pay our bills. Okay, so how many like sales can we expect? Okay, well, what's the price point that we need to like, set at those that many sales we think we can get to make that much money type of stuff. But like a lot of that, it's very much disconnected from the individual customers or users that you already have. In this case, you built up a very, strong user base before you converted that to a customer base as well, going from free product to freemium, right? So it's just very interesting how you went about that and how engaged you were with your community in that regard. Um, Maybe not big changes, but how about surprises? Like, did you get any surprising feedback from like anyone along the way, either like, back then or recently that was like, you know what? Never would have thought about that. Never thought anyone would want that, or never thought someone would use this product in that way. We should try, pursuing that or give a test and see something like that. Any surprises?
Yes, yes. The first surprise was when I created the product. My expectation was that typically makers will use it, and I mean students, people that just want to learn microcontrollers and start playing with them. But the first surprise for me was that artists were using it. About one third of the community, roughly, was composed of artists.
What
And
I'm curious, what kind of artists? Like
yeah,
what were they doing with it?
yeah, they're doing all kinds of things like uh, some type of clothes, as example, that had IoT devices embedded in them, animated sculptures, all kinds of things of that nature. So again, that's not that distant from the general makers community, but those were people that were specifically artistic people, and that's not something I expected. Again, it didn't force me necessarily to make any significant adjustments to the product per se, but it was a type of customer base I did not anticipate initially. So that was surprise number one. Surprise number two came a few years later when, I mean, initially I expected that Visuino is going to be used to make relatively simple projects, right? So just somebody trying to program a robot or something, right? Uh, what I discovered is that people, and I expected, okay, I mean, people will put 20, 30 components in it, and that's going to be about it. What I discovered was that people were making enormously complex projects, right, with hundreds of components and uh, functionality beyond belief. Uh, so, which forced me to create eventually professional version. Obviously, the standard version that I had developed for beginners and enthusiasts was not capable of handling such level of complexity. So I created a professional version which allows you to break the project into sub projects and sub diagrams and organize it better. But the reason that actually happened was that initially the early versions of Visuino, my focus was to make it easy for people to use, right? So I was not necessarily focused on generating the best possible Arduino and microcontroller code. My focus was, okay, those are people that have no experience. If they're experienced developers, they'll write code themselves. They'll write highly optimized code. My focus is to make it easy for the beginners and for the people that don't have the time or the ability to learn code. Uh, as the product was maturing and as I was using it myself more and more, I started making it to generate better and better and better optimized code to the point when it started generating code that is better than the code I was able to write myself by hand. Okay. So that allowed enormously complex projects, which normally, if you write it with traditional coding methods, you would not be able to fit into the microcontroller. You literally will not be able to create such complex projects unless you are some enormously good software developer. and you spend months and months to do it. Because of this extremely high level of optimization, that is what allowed people to make enormously complex projects. And that forced me into seeing the limitations of the version that I had and forced me to create a professional version. That was the second surprise in terms of surprise. I did not expect that people would be creating projects of this level of complexity with product that was initially intended just for enthusiasts and makers. I didn't expect that big companies like Rolls-Royce, as example, would be buying this product and using it for their equipment. So that was the second surprise. So those were the two big surprises: the artists at the beginning, and eventually the fact that the mainstream industry discovered this as a product and found it as a very valuable product, and they started buying it, that which forced me to create version for them. So those were the two moments in that 10 years history that were big surprises for me.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing, and like it it's great because it was so organic, and that's in my opinion the way that a lot of this should go is organically while you're taking a slow steady approach. That way you have more control over the decisions you're making and the way in which you are managing your risk and your resources, right? If you were rushing ahead as many entrepreneurs do, and you're chasing after Rolls Royce from the beginning, there's a good chance that you would be making a lot of mistakes along the way because you're skipping so many steps to go from this very early stage product that's again starting from a very authentic personal place and then trying to just like force that into Rolls Royce's hands, right? It's like, well, you haven't confirmed any of these core assumptions yet. You don't have like any validation. You don't have any traction. You don't have people using the product, and you can't speak to that. But it just kind of evolved into that. And I'm curious, like in regards to the freemium version, commercialized version, those discoveries and making the pro version of the product, how did you how did that differ at that level from the early commercialization, like knowing that Rolls Royce is using the product, like how much did you take into account the size of that company in regards to the pricing model, the business model?
Yeah, again, the pricing model again was decided by the community, and yeah, we probably are due after 10 years for some price adjustments. Not to mention, I mean, inflation and other factors that are playing into it. I have kept the prices the same for many, many, many years. Uh, Again, the honestly, and that's the feedback I have gotten repeatedly. The professional version definitely is priced quite low, frankly. But again, my desire has been to make the product as accessible to people as possible, and number of people that don't have to buy the professional version, they buy it because they enjoy it so much. So the professional version is actually selling relatively well. About one third of all recent sales are professional version sales, roughly. So that again, if I increase the price, I probably will focus more only exclusively on big companies, but I'm not sure if it's going to be necessarily good for the revenue because, again, so many people actually buy the professional version,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
even if they don't necessarily have to, just because it's affordable.
yeah. So this is
It's
like,
not cheap. I mean, it's affordable.
yeah, this is one of those things where it might be like you're saying, like it's due for a little bit of an upgrade. But perhaps this is, the next kind of evolution is having a very specific enterprise version that's like designed specifically for big companies like, Rolls Royce to use, that's separate from like the standard pro version. um,
Yes.
and then a model like that would allow you to conceivably keep the pro version still accessible to people that aren't big companies, but allow you to then again have this additional revenue stream and this special way to pitch those companies directly that might work out. I don't know. I'm just like throwing ideas out
Agree.
there based on
Agree.
like, yeah, lots of the other conversations you've seen me have with other mentors. But yeah, but it's definitely interesting. Like it's such a fun like story and journey that you've been on as an entrepreneur, again because it started somewhere so organic, and it was so uniquely community oriented and charged with, yeah, how it evolved. um, yeah, Mike, if you got anything, any questions, you want to come up, feel free, let us know. um, yeah, a couple other chatters, feel free to use the chat if you have any questions. um, Boyan, what's some other key things that we should probably talk about that's interesting? We got AI. You're working on your new AI product. Um, yeah, like I know AI is like one of these things that most people that are hyped about it don't understand it. They misrepresent other technologies as AI. Um, yeah, it's just kind of like, one of these cycles of hype that happens. It's fads. And AI's been around for a very very long time. This is probably like in, like, our lifetime, what, the fourth time that AI has been the hot topic and the buzz. But I mean, yeah, from your standpoint, your experience and how you're working on AI product, um, yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear your take on some of these things, and what, how you're utilizing AI, not so much as the product itself, but as a technology to create a great product. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Again, I mean, I probably am not gonna completely shock, but I may surprise some people saying that AI is in its complete infancy even today. And number one, I mean, people don't realize that AI is not brand new thing, right? AI development predates me. It had started probably before I was born. Uh, 50 years ago, there were already perceptron devices, and perceptron is the predecessor per se of the neural network. Actually, perceptron is just a single layer neural network, right? And people were building perceptrons 50 years ago. So again, those were predominantly hardware devices, but the fact is people are already moving in that direction. And then, of course, the other interesting aspect of AI is that it's not one direction development. It has gone all kinds of different paths if you follow the history. Uh, there was a period about 30 something years ago, if I recall correctly, in the 90s, where people were developing what was called expert systems. And expert systems were not using neural networks, they were not using traditional classifiers, though that's arguable because they were using kind of sort of T type of classifier, so you can call it a classifier again. It's a bit fuzzy area, but yeah, different approach was tried. Then we had for many years been using for things like speech recognition and computer vision and so on and so forth. Let's say for speech recognition, people were using Canon type of classifiers. For computer vision, people were using well, sometimes Canon, sometimes RBF, radio-based function classifiers. and so on and so forth. And what was the reason? The reason was that neural networks, they modeled the way the brain works, right? They were highly computationally intensive. So alternative approaches were being used, which were less computationally intensive, but had their limitations and restrictions. And that's why we had speech recognition for many years. It was not necessarily that good, but it did work. It simply did not use neural networks as classifier. It used, let's say, KNN typically as classifier. So now the reason we have this revolution is that now we have computational power that allows us to run complex neural networks. And suddenly the neural networks, they start to exhibit their advantages over alternative type of classifiers, where traditional classifiers were giving or outperforming neural networks, let's say KNN classifier as example, with limitations. Now neural networks can compete with them and sometimes actually outperform them just because we have the necessary computational power. So that allows us to actually start developing more and more complex neural network based models. The thing is that we're just tiptoeing with it right now because again, large language models, okay, they're impressive. They give us the impression of somebody there thinking and chatting with us and so on and so forth, but they're still very, very limited compared to what human brain, as example, is capable of doing, right? And we can go deeper in that rabbit hole, but that's going to take forever, so I'm trying to keep it simple. So what I'm saying is we're just at the beginning. At the moment, we see just here and there, like pops in a pan when you're popping popcorn. Yeah, some corns are popping here and there, but it hasn't even started. So what is going to happen in the following years, hopefully, it is going to be a complete revolution, right? And it's going to cover many, many different areas because, again, everybody at the moment is focused on ChatGPT and large language models, but that's a very small fraction of where AI is actually applicable, right? So there's so many other areas where you can apply AI. And again, in some areas we're working, as example, computer vision and self-driving cars, that's a completely different area than ChatGPT and the large language models. The type of training is different, the model is different, the features you're working with are different, and more work has to be done in that area. Speech recognition is another area. There are probably hundreds of other. Again, another area. Okay, let's mention a few. Is analyzing genomes and DNA sequencing and analysis and so on and so forth. There are areas, other medical areas, where, for example, how proteins would fold and so on and so forth. Another interesting example is, well, actually two related examples. One is the stable diffusion. That's separated obviously from the large language model, but everybody is familiar with stable diffusion and artificially created images. Another area is what NVIDIA was recently presenting, which is interpolation, AI-based interpolation of images and improving quality of images or generating intermediate frames in frame generation and ray tracing. So again, AI is going to expand into so many areas, which means that it's not going to be like we're going to have few models like ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Llama or Gemini, right? We're going to have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of models doing all kinds of things, including specialized areas like quality production in companies or noise analysis for issues with engines or what have you, right? So they're going to be thousands, if not millions, of specific applications. And the reason I'm considering new product similar to Visuino for AI development is you're not going to have just few researchers that work in those few different models. You're going to have thousands of people working in all kinds of specialized areas trying to develop and run models. And I think that we need a tool to make that work easier than requiring everybody to code, right? So that's the reason I'm considering new product. Now, I'm obviously quite overloaded with everything I do, so I'm taking this product a bit slow, and I hope maybe to find some funding this time for a change and do it with a bit of funding, unlike what I have done with all of my other products, which I have funded myself, and I have the battle scars to to show for it, right? So that's my take on AI, and that's the reason I'm looking for such a product because again AI requires a different type of person than traditional software developer, right? So it requires different type of knowledge, different type of expertise. And the people that have this type of knowledge and expertise, they're not necessarily traditionally hardcore software developers and coders. So to expect from them to deliver high quality code when their expertise in actually is in the way the brain works, as example, or in the way a certain data is structured, and so on and so forth, it's unrealistic. That's a different type of skill set than traditional software developers. So from my observation, there are a lot of really cool and great AI models, but they're very bad in terms of efficiency and in terms of the code and the way they're written, exactly because the people that write them, they're not necessarily software developers, and vice versa. A hardcore software developer is not necessarily expert in those areas. So that's my take on the AI, and that's the reason I'm considering a new type of product in my long line of products.
No, I like
So
that.
sorry for the long speech here.
No, it's good. It was insightful and it's helpful too. And you also touched on some really important aspects of just, entrepreneurship and business in general. Um, this appreciation and understanding that there's different fields and different roles and specializations, and it's important to help assemble a strong team and not force someone into a role that isn't their field, right? It's not their specialization, because then you end up with some junk code, right? Like, I think that's good. And the other thing that is interesting is how you're taking essentially your same mission for Visuino over to this new product that's going to be helping with AI development. Um, making it more accessible, making it something that you don't need to be a specialist in order to get in the door with. And I think that's super important just in general when we're talking about STEAM, art included. It's very critical for people to have access to these tools and the ability to experience creating something, whatever that is, right? The easier it is for someone to start dabbling, the more likely they are to decide if this is something that they're passionate about. And if it's something that they are passionate about, then that's a win. It's a win for everyone because they're likely to pursue that and develop their own skills and knowledge and share that with other people in the community, in addition to whatever they may create, right? Like, they may create something really beneficial that's helpful, or they might just make like another like silly thing that doesn't really contribute much of anything, but it's still the result of creativity and someone's passion and endeavor to do that, which on its own, in a less like tangible kind of capitalistic way, it's still contributing to society and community because it's giving someone else like inspiration, a model to like, look at and be like, oh wow, if they can do that, why can't I do that? Right? There's been so many like, great examples of that in my life where I've been like very much kind of tough on myself and judgmental. But then, yeah, I see someone else do something and I'm like, oh, whoa, if they're doing that, I can do that too. I'm gonna ease up. I won't be so mean to myself. I'm just gonna create. What am I doing? I'm gonna pick up my camera. I'm just gonna take some pictures of some bugs outside. It's creative. It's fun. It's a good thing. So yeah, I think it's awesome that you have this overarching theme to what you're doing, which is all about making things more accessible, easier for people to dabble and get that experience and feel what it's like to utilize these things. So I think that's awesome. Um, yeah, we're coming up on time. So Mike or anyone else that's tuning in, if you have a question, you got until I get done ranting with Boyne to ask it, or we're gonna say that's a great session. Boyne, while we're waiting for possible final questions, do you have anything that you want to share? Any gems of knowledge that we didn't touch on that you think others should be aware of that you want to impart on others?
Yeah. Number one, uh, it's very difficult if you run a business to just focus on developing and selling product. You also need social interaction. You need to, I'm looking for the right word to use, but you need networking. So part of the reason my business is not more successful than it is I tend to stay all day long in this environment, and I obviously have a lot of things to work on and handle. But that being said, networking is important, making the right connections is important. So people do not underestimate that. And Gary, I mean, thank you so much for making it easier for all of us to achieve that. Right? The second thing is creating business by accident, like me. Okay, I mean, it may be a fun experience, but take a bit more traditional approach is my advice. Make sure you run some business analysis up front, because otherwise you're going to end up like me, trying to constantly juggle everything and trying to keep it from falling apart, right? And that's not the way it should be in a proper run business. Uh, Third advice: do not try. Okay, let's put it this way: try not to self-fund business like I did. That's a hell of a way to do the business. Yeah, I mean, I did it. I survived barely by the nails, but I survived. But if possible, try to get some funding, because again, without funding, you end up with the situation in which I very often find myself. Okay, I need to find some money to do some advertisement or what have you, so can do more sales. But until I make some sales, I don't have this money, and so forth. So you end up in really bad cycles, right? And marketing and sales is very often expensive, but it gives you the returns. So again, like it or not, you will need the funds. And if you don't have the funds, you're going to be struggling. So try your best to get some funds from somewhere. Otherwise, you're in for really rough time. And I'm here to prove it. I have been through this time, and I'm still going on, because I still haven't taken anybody's money. I still just self-fund it with whatever I can achieve with. So that's my other advice. Other than that, I don't know what else I can say at the moment.
No, that's great advice. I think kind of finding that balance of, you know, either being purely organic and whimsical versus extremely structured and rigid with your planning and strategies, or you know sitting back and just, yeah, essentially daydreaming versus going and doing stuff all the time. Like there's balance between these different extremes, right? And so a lot of what I'm hearing is finding that balance, like just introducing enough structure, enough planning, and enough patience into the mix. And with the funding side of things, like, yeah, when you're first starting, it's going to be important to, yeah, bootstrap it at first, because it's going to be near impossible to raise money for most people. When you read TechCrunch articles, a lot of those articles are focused on people that raise millions of dollars for their idea, for they have an MVP in some cases. But what they don't really get into with those stories and how they cover them is those founders have immense privilege. Either they're coming from a very wealthy background, or they have existing relationships with extremely wealthy people, like big VCs and angel investors that know them already and trust them already and are willing to take a risk, because investors are taking risk, right? If they're running a VC fund, if they're making, let's say, like 20 deals, if one deal's for a friend, what's the big deal, right? So it's those kind of little things. But for most people, most of us, you got to get some validation, some traction, and you got to do that, on your own. But once you have that, then you can leverage that. You can start attracting some investors and negotiating terms that are favorable because you have leverage, right? So again, balance. It's about finding the balance with a lot of these things. So I appreciate hearing your journey and your experiences, and a lot of wonderful insights and lessons that you imparted on us. And yeah, Mike, thanks for hanging out with us, and yeah, being real supportive of Boian and his journey. And yeah, others that are on Twitch and LinkedIn and YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, Boy, I'll have you back again, because this will be, yeah, more fun. We'll get again, as I'm learning more and I'm on this journey myself, I'll be able to rope in a lot more people. And there's some fun things in the works with a lot of universities in town, and I'm working on some deals where they'll be funneling their students and alumni and staff into the community. So hopefully, yeah, a lot of fun young minds to inspire and educate about what you've got going on and your tools that can help them.
Well, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Mike. I mean, I was expecting that you may join the conversation, but I mean, I highly appreciate it.
Mike, I'll get you involved, get you as a mentor too. So you're rad. Also, in chat, if people didn't notice, I posted 3 links to organizations, at least in the U.S., that are very, very helpful. Um, One's the government agency. I don't know about the funding and what's going on, but because it's business oriented and Trump is a business person, as is Musk, I would be shocked if they mess with the SBA too much and their funding. But it's a great agency that helps businesses not only with finding loans, but they all have all different types of programs out there to support you, and they also are connected to probably every other organization, or at least the majority of the other organizations in your county and city. So they're a good starting point to find resources and support and communities to be a part of. SCORE, they provide mentors for free. They're wonderful. They are funded by the SBA and the counties in your town or that you're a part of. Check them out if you need mentorship. And then SBDC is similar to SCORE, but it's much more hands-on. It's less mentorship, more consultants that they provide you to help your business get to the next level. Boyne, if you haven't been introduced to anyone at this BDC, let me know. I think your business would probably be a great fit for what they got going on, and could be helpful, especially when you're like, thinking about funding with your existing company and the new one that's on the way. So yeah, just for you and others, check them out. And with that, I want to say thank you again for your time and being a part of this. And I'll see you on Friday.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning.